Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We are coming to you from South Hadley, Massachusetts. I'm your host, Carrie, and joining me is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Cohen. He offers both public and private tours, as well as presentations of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Mass. Now you actually lead these tours and give these presentations yourself, is that correct?
I led this tour last year, and the owner of the building did a tour inside after I did the exterior.
And so today he'll be educating us on the Judd paper. So give us a general history of this area.
Okay, the area itself is bounded by Race Street to its west or front, and then there's the alleyway behind that is Main Street. And so if you think, this was the start of industrial Holyoke down in this particular neighborhood. And of course, Holyoke grew greatly from its industrial beginning in 1848. The canals were being built, and it has a second level canal right in front of the Judd paper area. Along the way, it also developed neighbors. It developed to one side old Sears provision stores, and then the other side is developed old wire mill, the cubit. It's not called a cubit, but it used to be called American covered wire. And so it developed along the way lots of different things. Now, if you look at this neighborhood, the Main Street neighborhood, right behind it, from the tip where Race and Main start, there's lots of little buildings that start there. And that's important because when I give this tour, we start where the canal is, but we quickly go on to Main Street. And they talk about all the little businesses that start there. And if you count them up, I believe there's 11 buildings in a row from Middle Street up to the tip of the canal. And 7 of those 11 buildings at one time were all saloons or bars. So that shows what people were doing back then. But there was other businesses there too. There were all right. So this whole general area grew at different times. There was also a train station nearby. The first, very old one, was where the modern one is. Now that was right across Main Street from Judd. But there was also one close by. The second one was put on Bowers, but that was close by. So this is the center of all transportation, of all mill work, and this was a very important business, and I'll tell you about that.
Now tell us about Judd paper.
Well, Judd paper did the end processing of the paper. So the bulk paper was made at other big mills around, like the Parsons paper mill, the Whiting paper mill, the Albion, and so forth. But Judd paper would get it ready for distribution. It would cut it up. It would sometimes add color and lines to it. And then it had many suppliers that wanted it, and it would get those suppliers ready. So this kind of mill, sure, it did a little bit of processing, but mostly got it out of the city. But also, on the other hand, it had a line of chemicals and equipment that the major paper mills around Holyoke could use. So it was a paper supplier to the big mills and a paper supplier to the distributors around the United States. And that's what they mostly did.
Now, before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there he has both videos of the various stops along each tour, and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you're interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, and they are perfect for fun and educational outdoor activities for the whole family, or for group parties, especially those special occasions and get-togethers. They are also good just for getting outdoors for the day. So getting back to our interview, this former mill has become Gateway City Arts. Tell us about Gateway City Arts.
Okay, so it was very nicely about 12 years ago, changed over from use, and what it became was a social function hall and a series of restaurants and a tiny theater called the Divine Theater. So they had, for instance, in this bigger hall, these musical groups would come in and they perform, and it got a lot of people to come downtown Holyoke, and that was great. So Holyoke became a place to be. It also became a restaurant. It had various names to it, and that was great because it had a Czech American cuisine to it, and a lot of people loved about or go to this kind of restaurant because it's very unique. And it had its own workshops. It had its own artist space on the top floor and residential spaces. And I thought very cool it had a Divine Theater, which was great because they put on either presentations, speeches, or theatrical performances. And a lot of people loved going down there.
So you are starting a series of podcasts on the Mills of Holyoke. Now, what are the mills that series will be about?
Okay. The series is going to be about looking at all the mills and how their origin, how they started, what they started doing, what they made, what the workers were like, how they fit into Holyoke and its development, where they were along which canal, what happened to them, where they went, how many workers they had, how much produce did they put out, how did they use the train system to get things in and out, how did the buildings change around, both for their own company, how did they sell small parts off to other mills, and in general, how did they fit into what other mills around the country were doing at the time for that various industry. Now remember, Holyoke had silk mills, wool mills, alpaca mills, it had cotton mills definitely, and then lots of paper mills and wire mills, and so forth and so on. And it had companies that were trying to work on the paper. So it had one company called Eureka that was not making the paper, but taking the paper and then changing it into, for instance, graph paper. And then they changed with the times as graph paper wasn't needed. They changed into software that could be used by lab technicians to present their graphs. So along the way, all these mills have a history. So what I want to do with this podcast series is develop why these mills existed and the direction they changed and what they did for Holyoke, were they positive, so forth. I'll give you one example. The Far Alpaca Mill started in Holyoke in 1873, but very quickly it had its mill number 1, and then had mill 2, 3, 4, 5. It went up to mill number 7 that they had. Another one was the Merrick, ended up having not only Merrick 1, but a Merrick 4. It had 4 mills going. And a lot of these companies were that way. They expanded greatly. And other smaller companies were around town, and not many people know about them. There was the Henry Seymour Cutlery Company, and they made a lot of scissors. And so I want to tell you about all these little things.
Thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours, and I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can also tune into a large selection of our other podcasts and much more at his website, and again, it's HolyokeCanalTour.org. And again, you can email him directly for private tours or to inquire about anything else at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And be sure to keep an eye out for his upcoming 2024 season tours and more as they become available. Thank you for tuning in.